Chapter 11. A month later, on June 7th, Aalliyah wasn't working that day at the library for once. Though it was Saturday, Nate had gone to Cambridge to study. Aalliyah flopped onto the couch, reclining on her back. Jeramie watched her from across the room and could tell she was extremely bored. He offered, "I'm going out to the forest to collect some herbs. Would you like to join me?" "Yes," she cried, leaping to her feet, eager to have something to do. "What types of herbs will we be looking for?" "Mushrooms, roots, and several types of leaves." She grinned and threw her hair into a ponytail and grabbed a bottle of water. In another second, she was ready to head out to the woods. The two set out, and Aalliyah listened as Jeramie talked, explaining the purpose of each item they gathered. They were laughing and having a jolly time. Jeramie saw the sunlight glittering in her eyes, and any hints of boredom were gone. He loved having the chance to share his passion with her, especially because she seemed interested in it. He vowed to show her a day in his life the next weekend she would take off from the library. Curious, she decided to make it that very next Monday. When Monday came, Nate kissed Aalliyah and hurried off to Cambridge. Jeramie then walked with Aalliyah a few streets down. There was a tiny building that had to be the size of a hut. Jeramie unlocked the door and welcomed her inside his second home. She saw a room with several chairs scattered about and fun posters on the wall with flowers and herbs. Jeramie led her through a set of wooden doors, and there was a cushioned bench. The rest of the room was covered in containers and cabinets filled with any herbs of all kinds. Each drawer was carefully labeled. On the counter, a large book was resting. Aalliyah walked over and flipped it open. It modeled a scrapbook in style. Herbs were taped to the pages, and a column next to it said what it was, how to find it, and most importantly, what it could be used for. "This is remarkable," commented Aalliyah as she flipped the pages. "Thank you. It took me a long time to make it. As I learn, I continue to add to it. I have most of it memorized from the years of practice, but once in a while I come across something I haven't seen in a long time, or at all, and it is handy to have a book to reference then," he explained. He heard the bell chime on the front door and glanced at the clock. "Pardon me for a moment." Aalliyah nodded and Jeramie disappeared through the wooden swing doors. He returned a second later with a woman by his side. Automatically, the lady sat down on the bench. Then Jeramie addressed her. "Mrs. Williams, how are you and your child doing since last you've come?" The lady reported, "Better, but I'm still very uncomfortable. The pain isn't extreme, but still enough to disrupt my day. I should check to make sure it hasn't developed into something more serious. Can you lie down, please?" She nodded and lied back. Gently, Jeramie pressed her abdomen and then reported, "Everything is fine. Your child is just giving you a hard time. I'll make something quickly for you to continue helping." He turned away from the bench and pulled several herbs from drawers and containers. He dumped them into a bowl and added a tablespoon of water. Steadily, he mixed and grinded the materials together. After several minutes of constant motion, the herbs were combined into a thick liquid. Then he poured it into a small vial and held it out to the lady. He instructed, "Pour about 10 drops into your tea every morning, and it should help you be more comfortable for the day. On days you're really feeling awful, have a cup of tea with the same amount of drops. If at any point you worsen, return to me immediately and go to the hospital." "Thank you. You're welcome." The lady stood up and left. Jeramie looked over his shoulder and smiled, meeting Aalliyah's eyes. She questioned, "So you have an entire medical practice? You're a doctor?" "No, I never went to med school. I only know the way of the herbs. My practice is for those willing to put their trust in me and my knowledge. Some choose to believe in the healing powers of the natural world, and that is what draws them to here. I try my best to help with whatever ails them, whether it be cuts, sickness, soreness, and things of all that type. If it is ever too severe, I order them to go to the hospital where doctors could better help them," Jeramie corrected. "That's really cool. I bet you help a lot of people." "I try to." "Do you usually have a lot of people come throughout the day?" "It goes back and forth. Some days I have a ton of people, and others I see one or none. It really depends." "What do you do when you hardly have anyone? Do you just sit around bored all day?" Jeramie laughed. "Goodness, no, I would lose my mind. I'm not the type of person that sits still easily. If I have any patients come, after they leave, I always update the log. Actually, I need to do that for Mrs. Williams quick. He turned on the computer monitor and pulled up her file. Aalliyah watched as he typed in what she had told him, and he added what he gave her. Then he opened a spreadsheet and adjusted the number of herbs that were used for her. "Is that how you know when you are running low on herbs?" she inquired, and he nodded. "It makes it a lot easier to skim quickly and make a list when I go to the market or on a walk in the woods. Occasionally, I will go over inventory, making sure the spreadsheet is accurate. In doing so, I sometimes find herbs that have gone bad and need to be disposed of. I never throw them out, though. Come, let me show you." Jeramie led Aalliyah outside, and she gasped. There was a beautiful, flourishing garden out back. Flowers were growing, and so were various herbs. "Jeramie, this is gorgeous." "Indeed, I'll show you it more closely in a second." He walked off, and she followed. There was a large bin constructed from wood. He undid the latch and lifted the lid. Then he filled in, "This is where I put the herbs that can no longer be used to help people. The herbs came from the earth, so I give it back to the earth. This bin makes it into compost, which I then use to fertilize the garden soil. I told you before, I'm really connected to nature, so I always make sure to give it back. Let me show you the rest of my world." The two of them started walking side by side down the path in the huge garden. There were so many flowers blooming in every color, Aalliyah couldn't even think of the term for them all. "So, these flowers, are they to make the garden look more beautiful, or do they each have a purpose in healing?" "They each have something they can do. Some we can use the petals, others the stems, and some the saps in the leaves or stems, and others the roots." "Do you know what every plant in your garden is?" "Off the top of my head, most of them. But it can be a bit much to memorize. If you look closely, each section is labeled." He wove through the garden more and then came to the fenced-in location. He opened the gate and whistled. A moment later, a horse came galloping over. "Hi, girl," he cried, rubbing her neck. The horse seemed to welcome it. Then she noticed Aalliyah and cautiously shifted towards her. The mare smelled her and then wrapped her head over Aalliyah's shoulder. The mare breathed heavily and sent a gust of wind down Aalliyah's back. Jeramie giggled. "It means she likes you. What do you say, Melody? Can we give our friend a tour?" The horse snorted as her reply. Jeramie lifted Aalliyah onto the back of the mare and then carefully climbed up. He wrapped his arms around Aalliyah's midsection, and steadily the mare walked off. Jeramie pointed to the right. "There's Tommy the turtle. He had fallen from a high place and had a severe crack in his shell. The crack has mended, but it is still fragile. He likely would be all right back in his home, but like many creatures here, he doesn't want to leave. Oh, and there's Dougal, the duck. He had a flying accident and shattered his wing. It healed, but isn't perfect. He can no longer fly. For his safety, he cannot leave." "I cannot believe this. You have an entire animal preserve. You don't just heal humans, but animals too. How did you find all of the injured animals?" "Some I came across in the woods, and other times animals bring them to my doorstep knowing I am a healer. Melody, stop here, girl." Jeramie leapt down and knelt down by a bunny. "May I see how your leg is healing, Hopkins?" Aalliyah watched amazed as the rabbit sat down and extended its leg that was wrapped in a splint made from 2 twigs. Jeramie pulled the ties off and lightly pressed a finger along the bunny's leg. "Well, Hopkins, it appears your leg has made a full recovery. Shall we get you home?" The bunny nodded. "Good. Then you get to ride in the safety of my friend Aalliyah's arms." Jeramie picked up the rabbit and passed him to Aalliyah, who cradled him like an infant. Jeramie hopped back up behind her and spoke to the mare. "Take us to the far end of the preserve by the forest, please." The horse nodded and at a steady pace trotted off. Aalliyah gazed around, taking it all in. The land had elements of an environment fit for any type of species. There were ponds and streams running about. Trees were in the clustered areas and spread throughout. A few tunnels could be noted off of the path. It was marvelous and seemed to go for miles. Finally, though, a fence came into view and there was another gate. Jeramie jumped down to open it and then Melody walked through. He closed it and went back onto her back. They rode off into the woods for a while. "Slow down a bit," he ordered to the mare, and she obeyed. He pulled out a pocket notebook and a reference where he had written as he appeared through the passing trees. "There!" he cried, pointing to a tree that had a ribbon tied around it. Melody stopped and he left off and took Hopkins from Aalliyah. He set the bunny on the ground and talked to it for a moment. Then he saw the little one hop off back towards the burrow it lived. He gave it another minute before climbing back up behind Aalliyah. Melody took them back to the preserve and then back to where it and the garden began. He got down and held out his hand to help Aalliyah to her feet. Aalliyah commented as they headed back inside the building. "I see now how you keep busy. And you run this place all on your own?" "I do." "How would you know if someone came needing your help while you were out with the animals?" He pointed to a bell on the wall, and she saw the sign next to it that said, "To let Jeramie know you are here, ring once. If it is an emergency, ring it twice." He then explained, "I wear this little watch, and when the bell is pressed, it vibrates my wrist, so I know." "What you have built here is incredible, but how do you do it all on your own?" He sighed. "Some days it is really a challenge meeting the needs of the humans and animals and the maintenance of the place. Most days are manageable, though. Why don't you hire someone to assist or ask for volunteers?" "I would want my helper to train under me for a long while before I would trust them to take on larger tasks like tending to a person or animal on their own, unless they are a certified nurse or vet. Another reason is no one has ever offered." "Well, I would love to help you. I love animals, and helping them would be amazing." "Aalliyah, that's sweet, but with running your library, you won't have time." "Maybe it's time for a change. I mean, sure, I enjoy working as a librarian, but it is the same thing every day. It gets old. Plus, I have been doing it for years. I could use some new excitement." It was then she noticed a set of stairs off to the side, and it caught her curiosity. "What's up the steps?" "I'll show you." The two climbed up, and there was a little room with a bed. Attached to the room was a bathroom. "Is this where you stay when Nate and I share the bed?" "Yes. Initially, I added it to be if I needed to stay the night and keep an eye on a patient human or an animal overnight, but rarely does that occur. Come, I need to update the animal log and put that Hopkins went home." "So, Melody, was she once injured and chooses to live here like Tommy?" "No, she wasn't drastically injured. She's my assistant and gets me to the animals faster. Although she has faked leg injuries before to pester me. She is a real sarcastic bear who loves a practical joke. Now, I am too wise to and know her tricks, so she doesn't usually try it anymore." While this was happening at the university, the two astrologers were in the library working on their research, or at least one of them was. Nate had stopped and was gazing at Lucy with a soft smile. He was amazed how consumed she was in her work. She had a notebook, textbook, and a ruler sprawled across the desk before her. With the ruler, she noted the length in centimeters between stars and other planets, or what she believed to be planets. She measured the distance in her notebook, but also in her hand-drawn notebook. Then she wrote down her recordings. Finally, she realized Nate was staring at her, so she met his eyes. "What?" she demanded. "Nothing. It's getting late. I didn't want to interrupt your thoughts, but do you want to grab lunch?" he responded. She glanced up and noticed it was just after 1 o'clock. Her work had been the center of her mind. All of the rest of the world had faded away. Suddenly, reality came back to her, and she felt she was hungry. "Yes, please." She closed her books and swept them into her satchel. Then she rose and went beside Nate. Together they started down the flights of stairs. "You were quite consumed in your studies. Did you get a lead?" "I found a few more possibilities. However, some I cannot be certain they are planets and not stars, so that will have to wait until tonight so I can study the pattern and see if they twinkle or hold still. How's your research coming?" Nate answered, "Well, I found a few more primary sources stating how the star of love guided them and their soulmate together. I'm going to shift my attention to how to harness the energy from it and how to recognize it from the other stars." "That will be a great addition to your paper." "Exactly." The two entered the building where the dining hall was located, and as they neared the stairs, Lucy commented, "I hope it's good food today." Nate replied, "We missed the lunch rush, so it'll be the leftovers, and it could be somewhat cold as it usually is at lunch wrap-up." The two found one of the many empty tables to set their bag on, and then went off to the buffet to decide what to add to their tray. Lucy glanced around the room and saw the main line had chicken, which she figured wouldn't be as good as it was an hour ago. The sandwich bar was an option, but she didn't want that today. The pizza grill had a few slices left, but she cringed seeing it was mushroom pizza and broccoli pizza left. Over by the desserts sat containers of cereal. Lucy sighed and decided to get a salad. Wanting to jazz it up a bit more than usual, she sprinkled in almonds, walnuts, and small chocolate chips. To her tray, she added a side bowl of strawberries. She wanted something sweet today, though, so she went over to the dessert bar. Cookies, lemon cake, and dark chocolate vegan brownies lined the display. None appealed to her in the moment, so she went to the ice cream station. She took a spoonful of the milk chocolate drizzle and swirled it on top of her strawberries. Then she headed back towards the table. A smile crossed her lips when she saw Nate approaching. She stopped walking and sneezed accidentally, dropping her tray. Food flew everywhere and splattered on the floor. The echo of the clash resounded around the dining hall. The staff and the stragglers finishing lunch all looked her direction. Nate saw how embarrassed she looked and bothered she was. He went over to her and set his tray on the nearest counter. He knelt down to help her clean up the mess. As she placed a piece of lettuce back on the tray, Nate saw a drop of water landed on the floor. He grabbed her chin and tilted it up to meet her eyes. Tears were falling down her cheeks. "Oh, Lucy," he sighed, pulling her into his arms. "It's okay. Accidents happen," he assured. "Yeah, but everyone saw me," she cried softly. "It's all right. Go back to the table. I'll finish cleaning it up and bring you a fresh tray." "You don't have to." "True, but it will help you calm down better." Finally, she gave in and walked off, gazing at the ground to avoid eye contact with anyone. A few moments later, Nate came over with a new tray for her. She had her head buried in her arms, lying on the table. "Lunch is served," he said cheerfully, but she didn't react or lift her head. Nate slid the tray over next to her instead of across from her. Lightly, he laid his hand on her back and rubbed it in attempts to lift her spirits. Finally, after 10 minutes, she sat up. The tears were stained on her cheeks, but had stopped falling. Slowly, she ate her food, but did not say a single word. As she and Nate strolled back over to the library, she mumbled, "Thank you." They went back to their studies, but Nate noticed she couldn't focus, and likely her mind was replaying lunch over and over. "Perhaps you could use a study break?" he suggested. "It could be beneficial, but I don't know what I could do for a break. We could go back to my room and stream a movie. That might help get your mind off of things." Lucy smiled and nodded. The two went into the room and placed themselves on the couch. Nate turned on the TV and pulled up Netflix. "What would you like to watch?" he thought. She held her hand out and he passed her the remote. For a few seconds she hesitated and then started typing in the search bar. Nate laughed. "The sun is also a star? Well, that fits us." "Have you never seen it before?" she responded, and he shook his head. "Oh, it is so good. I recall it when it came out, watching it with my best friend in the theater. Though it does talk about the stars, it is definitely not the center point of the story, like you and I would think astrology-wise." She clicked play, and the opening started. After about 30 minutes, Lucy began to drift off to sleep, but not because she was bored. Her head fell and landed on Nate's shoulder, startling him. Almost alarmed, he looked at her and then realized she was asleep. Gently, he pushed her head off of him. A second later, it fell again. He lifted her head again and leaned it towards the armrest. However, she awoke. "I'm sorry, did I fall on you?" softly she asked. "You did, but it's okay. Why are you so tired?" "I stay up super late studying the galaxy in the library." "But you are always there by the time I get in." "Yes, because I'd like to get up early to resume my research. It's why I always have a cup of coffee in my hand and one later in the day." With all the chaos at lunch, I didn't get to the chance to grab my second cup of coffee. "Can you pause the movie for a few moments and I'll go brew a cup?" He nodded, putting it on hold. "Would you like a cup?" "I'm all right, but thank you." When she came back, they resumed the movie. That evening, Nate came home and saw Aalliyah sitting out on the porch. He happily hurried over to greet her with a kiss. "How was your day, my darling?" he sought, kissing her cheek. "Fantastic!" she cried enthusiastically. "I'll tell you more about it, but first I have a question. What are my astrological stars saying this evening?" He looked up at the sky and studied the patterns for a while. "It's saying a change is coming your way." "That's funny, I can't believe that." "Why?" "Because I'm considering leaving the library." "You are?" Yes, Jeramie showed me his animal preserve today. It's remarkable and so kind. It has been boring doing the same thing at the library every day. Besides, I love animals and helping them would be amazing. In addition, Jeramie doesn't have any helpers. You make good points. You would be wonderful at taking care of the animals. If it is where your heart is calling, I say you give it a chance. I know Jeramie can be quiet about certain things, and I know he's always wished to have an assistant, but wouldn't admit it. He will really appreciate it. Plus, then you wouldn't be so lonely and have more to do while I'm off at Cambridge. Then it's settled. I'm going to leave the library.